How you guys doing?
Woo!
I was just telling Josh, I'm supposed to introduce you, but if I'm not here, maybe give me a call. I might be distractible. But I'm here. So I have the pleasure of introducing Josh. He is the founder of Pantheon. It's one of the best managed hosting companies on the marketplace. They specialize in Drupal and WordPress. And I mentioned not as a sales talk, but simply to say they've got open source in their DNA. They've been a pillar of the Drupal community, and as we're getting into WordPress at EvolveDigital, also a pillar of the WordPress community, and really a thought leader. They've been always innovating on a technical side. They have a development ops, which they're calling web ops, because it's more than DevOps for bringing the whole digital team together. So it's very much aligned with the vision of EvolveDigital. And Josh, as one of the three co-founders, has been the strategist behind it. He's been their main link to the community. So it's an honor that you guys have been such a great partner for EvolveDigital. And today, Josh is very passionate about the question of where is CMS going? And I would like to know as well, since my livelihood depends on it. So, and if I'm not mistaken, because I read your blog post about it, you did a giant data analysis from crawls to see what are people actually using before and now. So with no further ado, Josh Koenig, and you're in good hands.
Thank you. I'm going to try to use this a little bit, not because I need the amplification of the small room, but I think for the recording purposes. It's great to be here with all of you. Thanks for coming out. Last session of the day, of day 2. I hope it was a great conference event for everyone, and you got some things you feel like you can take back and action next week and in the months to come. So, as Alex said, I'll talk about what I'm going to talk about, and it's in the presentation. So, hey, I'm Josh. So I'll go back a little bit deeper, because I'm here in New York. It's like, this is where my career got started. I was a theater student at NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, racking up a non-trivial amount of debt in order to pursue a dream of being on stage, which I realized about halfway through was never going to pay the rent. And so I also had these technology skills that I was leaning into to pay my way through school, and I started to lean harder in there. And I got involved. My first big career break was these guys who hired me to help take old 486s and Pantheons out of midtown skyscrapers where there was insurance companies, load them into their buddy's panel truck, drive them to Staten Island, disassemble them, figure out which parts were good and which parts weren't, build more powerful computers out of the parts that were available, and then install them in the basement of a couple of public housing projects in Staten Island so we could build computer labs for the community. It was a really fun project. It turns out there was not really a great business model behind it, but it was a really fun project, and through that I got to meet some people who were building the internet in a serious way, circa, again, 1998, 1999. I essentially was able to apprentice with them, learn Solaris, learn how to set up a SQL server, and all these things at an early age. I was very lucky. I got involved in Drupal because I tried to take over the government unsuccessfully. Turned that experience into an agency called Chapter 3. We built a bunch of sites based in San Francisco. And then after 4 years of doing that, we realized that there was a big missing piece in the industry. If you want to leverage open source and you want to take it to its fullest potential, you need a workflow, not just to host the website, well, that's very important, but also workflows to manage how the website itself, the code underneath it, gets managed on an ongoing basis. How do you make that work with content teams? There's, it's not rocket science. People do it on their own if they have the time, but a lot of people don't, or they don't have the expertise. And if you don't have a good workflow for managing the open source code, the content, and the configuration, your project could go off the rails. So we started Pantheon to prevent that from happening for as many teams as possible. And it's been a wild 15-year run. I feel very privileged, very lucky, and I'm very happy to be here with all of you today. So I have some biases when it comes to this topic. I will say I'm going to be talking about digital experience platforms, and like there's a little party that cringes every time I say digital experience. This category never really made a ton of sense to me, and a lot of other people, where it was kind of this weird mashup that industry analysts did. I think that a lot of the companies that are in this category are also corporate mashups that are a result of debt-driven mergers and acquisitions and tech integrations or not that are ill-advised or not. And I think that that's, there are a bunch of good companies that get sucked into this world and end up being not so good on the other side. I still have a fairly earnest belief that the internet and the web is a net positive for humanity. I will admit that in preparation for some of the work that I was doing, I looked at a couple of old talks I gave like 10, 15 years ago, and I'm like, well, I believe it was a lot harder then, or maybe I was a little bit more naive then. Like, there's definitely an ups and downs to all this stuff. But I still think that more people being more connected is gonna, on balance, lead us to better places. And what I'm showing here is just the result of my perspective and some data that I feel like gives me a good grounding. But everybody else has their own perspectives. I'd love to talk with any of you after this about where you see the industry headed. Okay, so really quickly, show of hands. How many people have been web professionals for more than a couple of years? All right, so then I'm going to blast through this because this is remedial. Hey, remember when just having a website on the internet was a thing that made you special? I do. That's not true anymore. As many of us experience, like it's kind of, sometimes there's really awesome projects, but sometimes it's kind of hard. And one of the reasons why it's kind of hard and difficult is when we work with the web in many places, we're not working in a greenfield context. We're not able to start something net new. Our organization, our business, our mission, our purpose, it existed 5 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe more, which means there's already some stuff in place for anything you want to do. And that stuff in place has to be accommodated. There's a whole other digital footprint you have to manage. And so it's very easy to feel bogged down when you're working on the web. And that's okay. It's okay to feel that way. But what we want to do is figure out how to break through that and get past it to where, we're turning the web into a force that drives our organization forward. People have all of these needs, like as we come together as professionals, right? Maybe you're familiar with the Maslow's hierarchy of human needs, but this is really something, the concept is like, if you're not meeting these baseline lower level needs, the other needs can kind of like go out the window. Really obvious, like, hey, if you don't have enough water or food, or you can't breathe, you're not going to be thinking about your career prospects, right? You're going to be trying to meet that basic physiological need. Websites have a similar set of needs, where there's an underlying thing where websites need infrastructure. That infrastructure has to be stable. It has to be compliant and up to code with to the extent that there are requirements around that. Usually there's some. And then the question is, okay, if you tick all those boxes, is this website any good? And is it making any impact? And the tragedy of our industry is that far too often people just spend all their time on those bottom 3 layers. And that's part of that feeling of being stuck and having a lot of friction. And if you can't get your infrastructure in place, or your website is unstable, or you're out of compliance, yes, that will suck all of the energy and time out of an organization to fix those non-negotiable requirements. But if that's all you end up doing, the probability is, because you didn't have the ability to invest in it, the quality of the website might not be that great, and if the quality is not that great, it's not going to make much of a dent. So you end up kinda going back to where you were, where we has website is all you can say to a we gotta do better. Thinking about impact is super important because it is how we can speak in the language of our organizations about why the work that we do matters. And what's interesting to me is over 25 and nearly 30 years of working in this business, the way you think about making an impact on the web hasn't really changed all that much. Like, the web is super important. It's the place that you own. It's the place that belongs to you. It's, people will come to you. Like I said in the opening keynote, right? Don't build on rented land. Right? You need to have your own digital presence to achieve your mission, unless what you're doing is very simple or simply purely informational. But most of us are here at a conference because we have something a bit more hefty than that we're trying to get done. And the reality is, like, you could probably roll it back to one of these 5 basic jobs. And if you identify that's the job you're trying to do, and you can get people to agree that that's the job we're trying to accomplish, all of a sudden you can kind of start talking about impact. And that can be a way to break political bottlenecks, get people aligned, unlock resources that you need to do better work. And this has been true through every era. This was true in the beginning, in the dot-com era. This is like the towers that I repurposed. This is true in the era where we sort of had the post.com, Google rose, search and social and everything else started to take off. Mobile phones have really changed the way the web works and the internet in general in ways that sometimes I think people who started in that earlier area still underappreciate. But like most web browsing is on this device, not this device. And people's expectations of what it feels like is different. I'm not sitting there to surf the web on my phone. I'm like tapping at a notification, and then a web experience is driving what's on the other side of that tap. But I don't think about that. I want it to be just as good as when I open a native app, right? Those expectations are changing. And now we're thinking about AI. We're thinking about this idea where the dominant way in which people are finding things is not through searching, but through asking. I shouldn't say dominant way, because the truth is there's still a ton of search, but it is, a shift is on in terms of how the public engages with the World Wide Web. It seems really clear that people like asking in many ways more than they like searching, and the experience you can get from these technologies that you can dialogue with is more engaging and more pleasant. There's also lots of risks and downsides, and a really open question about whether anybody can make money doing it. But the thing that I think, regardless of all that and what happens with the current sort of cycle of technology, it seems really clear that the humans, who are still going to be here no matter what, they like the asking. And I don't think they're going to go back to say, oh, remember that weird couple of years where we could like ask for information from the computer and it would give us a pretty good answer? I don't know, forget about that. I think once you have a change in modality for how people engage with technology, once you have a shift in human-computer interaction like this, it doesn't reverse itself. The only question is, what will it look like as it becomes more scalable, more economically viable, and hopefully better safeguarded against misuse and abuse? The last thing I'll say about this, and then we'll get off to my remedial, because this talk is also meant to go to places where people aren't all web professionals, is it's important to recognize that the web is both a medium and a channel. It's a medium in that it's how we do human-computer interfaces. It's the dominant way that software interfaces are built today. It's the web stack bundled into something, or in a browser, or in a viewport. It's not the only one, but it's by far and away the most prevalent, and it's because it's very good, and it's just widely adoptable. There's wonderful open source technology that makes all this fast to build and relatively fast to build and easy to maintain versus like coding it all in Java or like C++. And so like as a medium, the web has actually, it's kind of incredible what you can do now, right? The kinds of experiences you can build that just run in a browser. Like we're kind of like, it goes back, and they're so much better than what like the zenith of Flash was, whenever that like, in 2011. And I have moments where I sit down and okay, so like I have kids. I got a 5-year-old and a 9-year-old. My older daughter, she's in 4th grade. The school district issued her a Chromebook in kindergarten that she's kept through those years, and because they do some testing and other stuff on there. But then the teacher recommends like educational games, and I'm going to keep tabs on what she's doing. These are all running; they're all in browser, but they're incredibly sophisticated. Like they're like shoehorning like math lessons into what is essentially an MMORPG type of thing, where you're questing and beating up slimes and catching. Oh wait, what am I doing here? You're beating up on slimes and collecting potions and doing artifacts. You know what that whole gaming system ends up looking like. But instead of having to like go like drain my bank account to buy extra credits to accelerate through the next level, you have to like solve 4 math problems and then you unlock the next step. And like I'm like, that's really cool. And there's stuff that's even more sophisticated than that's out there now. So the medium of the web is more powerful than it's ever been. Like Figma tremendously powerful software. That is all in web. You're making web with web. That's actually why it works so well. But it's really, really cool to see that. Now the web is also still a channel. It's how people find you. It's how people reach you. It's that piece that you own. And that's what's getting like rocked right now. Like that part of the internet is getting ripped apart and put back together in real time. And we are living through a storm as a result. So the question then is, what the heck is going on? So here's what I did. I have been following this project called the HTTP Archive for actually a number of years. I met some of the people that were instrumental in starting it at this like confab that happened down at Google's campus like in the before times. And what they do is they run a very large scale, very in-depth web crawl of about 16 million websites. That number's been fairly consistent over the past couple of years, and that's the window for my analysis, because before they didn't have as many resources, they were doing fewer sites, and so it's harder to get an apples-to-apples comparison. But the actual history on the archive goes back to 2014, 2015, maybe even a little earlier. And what they've done is run their crawler across all these websites. They pick the websites based on what websites are the most visited on the web according to Chrome's anonymized performance reporting. Anonymized. So that's like you could quibble with it, but like that's as good as an Alexa ranking in terms of saying we're going to look at real websites that actually get some traffic, because there's a lot more websites that are out there. They're questionable whether if anyone visits them at all. So 16 million websites that get real traffic. They include tons of data, right, all the way down to all of the HAR files that list out exactly what performance characteristics, which JavaScript libraries, how long it took for the page to finish painting, or the time to interact. Not just the headline core web vitals, but all the underlying data necessary to calculate those is included in this data set. It's like got everything. So it's like each one is like about 1.4 petabytes of data. And they do the crawl every month, and they've been doing it consistently for a long time. And then they put all that onto Google's BigQuery, which is an incredibly powerful big data analysis tool. This is I've done a lot of research and analysis in my career. This is the stuff that I've done that is legitimately big data. Because there's no way, BigQuery is really funny. Like you run these queries and it'll tell you, well, it took 6.5 minutes to run some of the analysis that I'm going to show. But the actual compute time for a single machine, which they call a slot time, to run the analysis would have been like 635 days. And it's awesome. Google Cloud's got lots of scale, and they'll let you fan this query out to like a whole bunch of CPUs, jam through it in 6 minutes, aggregate the results, and the data that's in there is public, and I just pay for that compute time. And those big queries, they're expensive. They're not that expensive. They're like 10, 15 bucks a pop. So like it's actually pretty good. This ends my shilling for BigQuery, but it's an awesome tool. I really love it. So what is this telling us? So this is telling us that over the past 2 years, the market for web technology has been relatively stagnant, with one glaring exception. And that is the open source technology Next.js and the associated platform vendor Vercel. That's not my company, so I'm not here to like say, whoo, pat myself on the back. But it's objectively true that WP Engine, pretty flat, Pantheon and Acquia running neck and neck, also relatively flat. There's WordPress VIP down here. And then Netlify, which at the beginning of the analysis is basically one-to-one with Vercel. That's the sort of the first mover in the Jamstack world. Over the past 2 years, like that's incredible trajectory. They actually it's kind of dramatic because they get to cross WP Engine, Vercel does. And on the right next to it is just another point of comparison, looking at Drupal. Now we're just looking at the open source tools, not the platform vendors. And again, all the data in the crawls and the HAR, because all these things have fingerprints. Like you can tell who's on what platform because there's headers in there that you can pick out. And you can look at things like Drupal and all these others have signatures that you can say, if you got the full source of what it was looking at, you say conclusively that was a Drupal-powered site. The total number of sites running on Drupal's declined slightly over this time period, while Next.js, the open source framework, surpassed it in the middle and is still not looking back. I will say, because I came from the Drupal community and I want to stick on to it a little bit, there's a story underneath this story which is about Drupal 7 sites slowly sunsetting and Drupal 10 plus sites coming online. There is growth in the modern Drupal world. It's just not faster than the decline of people decommissioning Drupal 7, which is end of life. And so there's somewhat, you could say there's a future world where Drupal will start to tick back up when Drupal 7 is done being deprecated, which will probably take another couple years. Some other takeaways. So I want to provide some notes for scale. So this is the same chart that I was showing before with Drupal and Next.js with WordPress included. WordPress has incredible staying power. In the same time period, that in the previous graph it looked super dramatic, like, oh my gosh, they're running away with it. But when you zoom out and you say, well, actually, on the scale of WordPress, this is a real trend, and it's the thing why you should take this seriously. This is the rise of Next.js is the strongest trend of any web technology. I looked through and tried to find others, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the SaaS vendors. They're seeing some growth. But relatively speaking, that growth for Next.js is the strongest trend over the past 2 years. But WordPress is just chugging along, running 48% of the web, added 1 million sites in the same time period, and it's a juggernaut. Worth considering. 46%, sorry. Over there, you have, I wanted to look at non-open source technology, so kind of the widely used Webflow, Wix, Squarespace, Shopify. I wouldn't overreact to that one weird drop in the crawl. That was 1 month where they, for whatever reasons, they spidered 500,000 less sites. It was just, it's a free public data set. I can't get too mad about it. There's some nits like that. I don't think a bunch of people left Shopify and got back on it. I think the crawl missed some sites. But you can see that those technologies all have some growth. And I think there's a story here in that, people, I'm an open source believer for a whole bunch of reasons, but there's, the three freedoms of open source. It's free as in speech, which is super awesome because that's a core freedom. It's free as in beer, which is amazing because who wants to pay license fees for, an extra copy of a website? It's also free as in puppies. And the free as in puppies thing is actually a hard thing for a lot of organizations to handle really well. If we go back to that diagram, if they don't have the ability to manage the overhead and the responsibility of open source, those first 2 freedoms might be hard for them to hold on to in the long run. And I think that's one of the reasons why we do see people looking for simpler solutions that are more all-inclusive, that don't have these ongoing issues around maintenance and overhead. And when people are DIYing their open source situation, they may find themselves unhappy with what they've gotten. Now, also, people will find out that all the downsides of being with a proprietary vendor can come true too. Like, they might change their mind about what they do, they might get bought by someone else, your roadmap is their roadmap, whether you like it or not. But you can objectively see that there are a lot of folks that are willing to make that trade-off. And for smaller projects especially, I totally get it. 15 years ago, I would have maybe tried to build a WordPress website for my mom, but if she came to me today and wanted me to help her with a website, I would set up Squarespace or Wix because I would just need to know that she would be in a place where she could self-serve going forward. So now I want to get into the potentially the spiciest part of the presentation, which is where we go back to that digital experience platform piece. Because, go back over here. So, things are fairly static. Things are, Next.js is doing great and getting a lot of adoption. Drupal's a little bit of decline. But these DXP vendors, the ones that establish this category, that dominate in the enterprise space, they're all going down steadily. Like I pulled this data at the end of last year, and again in April, and again this morning, so I could get the November crawl data in. And the number of websites that are powered by these big brand DXPs is just shrinking. It's just a fact, right? And I asked some folks who are in the analysis game and some other folks that are doing practitioner work at the enterprise level who work for like big global systems integrators. And some of them are like a little defensive about it. It's like, oh, they're site consolidation, or oh, they're moving to headless. And that is happening. There is some of that, but I don't think that accounts for like a 36% decline in the number of websites that are running on Optimizely's web platform. It's not, and I went through and actually, it's like small enough numbers that I could start to spot check a bunch of them by hand. And like websites still exist, they're just running elsewhere. And so I feel that there is potentially I don't know that this trend is going to reverse itself, because this trend is not like, oh, there's legacy Drupal 7 out there that's slowly being wound down while the modern Drupal is coming up, right? Sitecore kind of tried to do that a couple of years ago. They said, we've got a cloud version of Sitecore that's got all the features we've been talking about forever, but it's a complete rebuild to get on there. And have we all been through that experience where someone says, yeah, there's great stuff over here, but it's a complete rebuild to take advantage of it? How well does that work? Not that well. So I think that there's something happening in the industry where these legacy players are holding on to their customers through inertia and inertia alone. And that's what's echoed with some of the folks that I talked with, the big, global systems integrators, where they're like, there is a steady trend of moving away from these folks, but they lock people in for long-term contracts. The projects to get off of them are big, and people are not necessarily super free with budget right now. But you could just see the movement in the market is slow, but it's only going in one direction. And I think for all of us as professionals, this is like kind of an important thing to take stock of and think about, how we can steer our, like if you are working for an organization that's thinking about steering into any of these platforms, like I will help you personally build the case for them not to do that, because it is just such a bad idea. And we were talking, Duran was talking about this, where some of this is like people going on the decoupled train, and the first wave of that, there's a lot of people that want to come back off of that too, because the truth is you can't have your web platform be a science experiment. So there's a happy medium somewhere in here, but these folks aren't finding it. So yeah, sorry, I should have advanced my slides. Like, there's a burning platform dilemma in the DXP space, and I think that it was something where there was a vision for this. The vision had some value. What people wanted when they went into this was real, but the reality of what they got from these platforms that were, in fact, mostly just an enterprise CMS with a bunch of private equity piled on top of it so they could buy up 4 or 5 other things and try to smash it together and go target Adobe. Like it's not a crazy strategy. You can kind of see how it would make sense, but I don't think anybody executed on it particularly well, and the results are what they are. So I feel like this platform is gonna, this category of software itself is gonna kind of unravel. And again, I bought the domain name ripdxp.com earlier this year, so I'm totally biased. God. That's where I'll be publishing more and more of this research, because it is an underappreciated story in the industry. The other thing I want to point out is just that with that growth of Webflow and those others, Webflow is one of the best top-line SaaS players. It's got like 40% growth over the same time period. Next.js has almost 400% growth over the same time period. I think open source is thriving. I think, with like mature platforms like Drupal having a bit of a rough time, and everyone loves to hate on WordPress, but it's still kicking. There's a need to actually go back and reappraise and re-educate the market on why open source in the first place. Because it's not just the honest truth is, for better or for worse, like moral and ethical arguments don't really carry the day in most RFP processes. Like, that's not the basis on which organizations make decisions. But there are a ton of really, really valid business reasons to want to have key parts of your digital strategy be open source, because you need to own it, because it's the fastest way to get what you want, because there's an industry standard emerging around it, because it's a way to tap into a global network of talent versus being with a proprietary system that only has a few niche vendors that can serve it. Right? That's as true today as it was 20 years ago, but I think the market has lost touch with some of those realities, and we all have to go out there and remind them sometime. But the good news is that open source is still thriving on the web, and I think it will for the foreseeable future. I don't see that changing anytime soon. I don't see the web getting blown away by AI. You still need websites. It's just that people are going to be coming to you. When the people come, not the agents or the crawlers, when the people come, they'll just be at a different stage in their journey than they would have been if they got to you through an organic search. It's still very vital to have a direct connection with the public, with your audience, with your constituents, with your fans, your followers, your consumers, whatever it is. You have to own the digital component of that if you want to be able to accomplish an ambitious mission. The other thing I think that's interesting that's happening is the convergence in the market. A bunch of the DXP players, well, not a bunch, all of them are there. They're trying to innovate. You see them trying to do things. I don't think it's working very well, but they're not just rolling over and, well, maybe a couple of them are, but most of them are not rolling over and dying and just being well, we're going to slowly degrade and just be as profitable as you can on the way out. They're all trying to do stuff. And then you've got all these new school folks that have come up in the MACH Alliance, the microservices, APIs, composable and headless. Thank you. Saved by the bell. This is a newer wave of vendors, and they're driving the whole composable conversation. But what's happening in the MACH Alliance is all the headless folks are gotta go out and buy ourselves a head.
Cloud native.
What?
Cloud native.
Cloud native. That's perhaps even more important. Thank you, Roland, the true expert in the room. But what they've realized is, again, the same way that a bunch of people have buyer's remorse from going all in on all decoupled everywhere, is actually I kind of want to have one company that I could get a vertically integrated solution that actually delivers a digital experience from, versus I got my API for content over here, my database for the content that goes into the API over there, my editing interface for the stuff over there, and then I actually also need to purchase a front-end platform and maybe also a CDN and figure out how to wire all that together to serve a web page. That's just not where a lot of people are, especially long-term. That amount of complexity doesn't serve them. So you see the headless folks buying heads, you see the front-end vendors thinking about not just having a lot of plugins, but actually having their own, we've got a back end for you too. So, and what's happening in WordPress and Drupal, that they both have a lot of innovation in their pipelines that are around being more composable and so forth. Next.js obviously is rising very quickly. The public clouds are offering more and more capabilities that directly address the web. One of the things that's interesting to me, and it's great for Pantheon, because I don't know that we would have the business that we have now if Amazon got really serious about running websites, but these guys have not really seemed to care about running websites directly. They're just we'll sling you some virtual machines, we've got a CDN, but your IT folks will figure it all out. But they have tooling that's getting closer and closer to approximating what Vercel does for Next.js anyway. I don't think they do a very great job of it, which is demonstrated by the fact that they don't show up as huge. There's not huge growth in adoption of those tools. Most of the people using public clouds today to do web stuff are still just setting up a VM and installing Ubuntu and doing it by hand. Beautiful, love that craft, but man, it's a lot of work. So I don't know, and at the end of the day, if you were expecting me to come in with all the answers, spoiler alert, I don't have all the answers. But what I do know is that there's a convergence happening in technology as the web as a medium becomes ever more powerful, as the web as a channel is increasingly disrupted and unpredictable, and as a bunch of the legacy vendors in this space are slowly falling apart. And there will come a point from a business standpoint where those shrinking companies don't make sense to keep operating in the way that they are. I don't know how many more big swings those folks have left in them, when they start to come apart or when they themselves get repackaged or rebundled, more interesting stuff will happen in the market. It might create great opportunity for all of us, but it's just something to be aware of and keep an eye on. At the end of the day, I believe that the future is here. It's just unevenly distributed. So what this is an overlay of the standard hype cycle. That's the roller coaster thing, right? Gen AI. We're running a Gen AI hype cycle. Like everyone recognizes that at this point. It's just the debate is where are we on that roller coaster ride? I would say we're close to some kind of top because there's going to be some reckoning with expectations and reality being mismatched. But there's real value there. Like I said before, we're not going back. I'd say that the headless revolution is on somewhere on its way down because people are recoupling. They're feeling like they kind of went all in on something and didn't get everything that they wanted, or it wasn't as sustainable. I'd say that like those monolithic DXPs, like the Contentfuls of the world, the Sitecores of the world, they're probably in the depths they're like at the low point. It's like, ugh, we paid $5 million for this, and this is all we got. Oh, and everyone's just feeling burned and trying to figure out a way out of it. I say open source CMS is like, it's beyond that. It's mature. It's here to stay. I think people understand it's got a role to play. There's a lot of value in it. But it has its time and its place. And there's like a lot of web out there that is on other stuff. There's still websites that are run on no discernible technology in large volumes. There's a ton of websites that run on Microsoft SharePoint, which will be officially dead for that use case sometime towards the middle of next year. And a lot of those people are freaking out because they don't know what to do today. So there's a lot of need for renewal of the web because, again, this is a legacy medium. We've got decades of history behind us, and pulling that forward, again, that's why I love the title of the conference, EvolveDigital, like evolving. We're always moving forward. And wherever you find yourself on this journey, you're not alone. There's ways that you can make your life easier and saner and more predictable. There's ways that you can make your life more innovative and exciting and maybe a little less predictable. You can chart your path. You can choose. As professionals in a market that is going through a lot of turmoil, I'll say again what I said yesterday morning. We need to help all the people around us find our way through it. Because there is a way through this. And it's not going to be the same for everyone. It depends on your circumstances. But we have to reach down into our expertise. We have to assess the landscape. We have to understand our mission and our purpose, and then have confidence that we can be a guide, a trusted advisor to those around us to navigate forward through this. So where am I placing my bets? This is kind of what I'm looking at doing with Pantheon, but also just what I believe in. So I think that the JavaScript as like the medium for doing human-computer interfaces and software, not slowing down, nothing's coming up to supplant it. It wasn't how I learned to do the web, but it's how everybody under the age of 30 did. And like that, just demographics are destiny on some level. But that is like clearly where there's a ton of innovation and energy and good things are going to be happening. So that's something that I want to really look into supporting fully and deeply and making sure that everybody has what they need when they want to use that medium to deliver via the channel. And I also think that we're going to see AI start to deliver value, not at generating massive amounts of replacement level content and slop, but actually at helping people understand what their goals are and measuring how well they're doing at achieving it. Because there's lots and lots and lots of data, but there's not lots and lots and lots of analysts. And AI, I mean that it's less about the LLMs and the generative stuff, although that can create a good interface. It's more about machine learning becoming more and more accessible, which is one of the things that's happening underneath the Gen AI sort of froth. And as it becomes more and more commonplace to be able to say, hey, here's my traffic stats for the past 6 months. What do you think is going on? And to get like a pretty detailed analysis of ins and outs, and they made this change and that happened. The type of work that used to be really, really rarefied and available only to, historically, like giant consumer companies that would analyze, have teams of hundreds of analysts analyze all their data to determine trends. Today you don't have to be that big, but you probably have to have like a data scientist and a few machine learning engineers and like really make a multi-million-dollar investment into like being data driven. I think that's not going to become free, but I think it's going to become really democratized over the next 3 to 5 years. And that's probably in the plateau of productivity for AI. This is one of the use cases that I think will really endure because it is really connected to meaningful value in addition to being good at generating goofy cat gifs. And that's it. That's my talk. Thank you for hanging out in the sweaty room and being here. I'm happy to take questions. Somebody's already got their hands up.
I saw that you had a lot of charts comparing different platforms and everything. And I saw the chart that says WordPress has grown by this much. It still continues to grow. And Squarespace and Wix and all those are growing this much. I guess my question is there any data that you've seen? We know WordPress is still killing it, but is there any data that says, people, like you said, for your mom's site, you would choose Squarespace. So is there any data that says those sites, Squarespace and Wix, are starting to take customers away from WordPress?
So for the sake of recording, the question is, do we have in this data the ability to point who's taking from whom in market share? Specifically, are Wix, Squarespace, et cetera, taking from WordPress? That is, there's a yes, but a but, which is it's in the archive has all the information one would need to perform that analysis. I have not yet created the query that can do that across like the WordPress scale of data. What I've done is with the much smaller numbers of DXP vendors, like manually gone back and looked at where are the sites that used to be on you. But there is a way, like I just haven't had time to like get down and crunch through it. But you can, with the SQL, and let's just spend another 400 machine days analyzing the data a different way. I can pull the list of these are the ones that used to be on WordPress and aren't, and then look them up in the crawl to say where are they now. I just haven't figured out the right way to approach that so that it's like kind of nice and smooth and automatic. But the thing that I would say is like in the world of that like long tail, when I've looked at this kind of stuff before, there's less movement than you would think. It's less, I built my mama website on WordPress, but now I'm moving it to Squarespace, and more when the next net new mom site comes out. Right. And so there is some stuff.
There's no way to tell what they
want to do. So there's a few things wrong. So they do include like their ranking in the data set, and I have not produced charts with the slices of from the top 100,000 sites, top 100,000 websites. That's big websites. Right. Versus ones that are in the 10 million quartile. That'd be a really interesting way to look at it and see where that growth is coming from. And that'd be pretty easy to do. I can follow up on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes?
Yeah, I apologize for being late, but I was really interested in what you said yesterday at the panel, being in the business of confidence at this time, which I understand is like a general approach, being trusted advisor, etc. Where would you say that confidence, I'm not talking about personal confidence, but like confidence comes from trusted advisor? Would it be data, experience, that you've tried to gain, slow down, you've seen it before, a combination of the two? Or like when we're not able to have all the answers, how do we essentially communicate that in a way that we're not undervaluing and being in panic mode, but also not overvaluing and being like, we know exactly what's going to happen?
Yeah, it's a great question. So where does confidence come from? A mix of data, expertise, judgment, and how do you deliver that to an organization? So I would say, like 10 years ago, there were a lot of people that were just talking about data-driven decision making, and the nuance on that, the more common phrase I hear now is data-informed decision making. And so there's one angle on that question is, if you have sufficient data and it's like clear, like what is going on or what to do, then you can make that decision pretty quickly. But also it's like, where's your value add, right? Like if the data, if a spreadsheet will just tell you what to do, eventually like the people aren't going to be necessary in that process. And where we as professionals, I think, really add value is expertise, right? And then being able to step into an ambiguous moment with our judgment and explain our thinking, right? That's the thing. Where often this falls down, and I'm guilty of this myself, because I'm like really confident in myself, and I can talk loud in front of people, and I'm like a tall white guy, so they just listen to me for some reason. When you just go in and assert your confidence, it can work, but that's kind of like a sales tactic. Like really what you need to do is find a way to educate those around you so that they can understand why you're saying, I know there's a gap and like we can't see it perfectly clearly, but here's what I believe is going on. I believe that because this prior experience, something similar happened before. I have anecdotes that support this from these sources, right? And when we can be, that's what that trusted advisor role really is. It's not just like, listen to me, I've got the answers. It's, I will help you understand why I think this is the answer so that you can feel like when you can give your confidence to other people, that's when you're really doing the best work, I think.
Cool, thank you.
Yep. Yes.
So you said you did go back and analyze a little bit more on the DXPs and where their folks went to. So what did you see there?
So yes, in the where did all those optimizing sites go, right? So one of the things that I looked for was consolidation, redirects, and there's some of that, right? But in terms of when that wasn't the case, I would say it's about maybe like there's no one answer. There's not a dominant theme there, which is kind of interesting. It's not like everyone's rushing to a new platform. I saw a number of sites that went to WordPress, that went to Drupal, that used to be running on a site cohort or an optimizer. I saw cases where those two vendors just traded customers. And I saw cases where they were building, it very much looks like they decoupled because the website now is running off of like a Vue.js or a Next.js or some other front-end app, and I don't know what's behind it. So maybe they're still using the old vendor, but they have a decoupled front-end. A good number of them, the websites just don't exist anymore, which is interesting because people do decommission sites, people do go out of business, people change brand and strategy approaches. So it is one of my goals to be able to, in the spirit of answering the other question as well, be able to actually have the BigQuery give me a kind of a comprehensive readout on where are they now. But unfortunately, if I had that, I would have put it in the presentation. I don't have this rock solid answer to that question today. I just think this is professional judgment. Though I don't have the data that tells me exactly that, the rate at which, and the steady decline, month over month, for going on 2 years now, to me suggests really strongly, and the examples I saw where they did in fact either swap one for the other or move to an open source platform or something else, suggest to me that those big DXP platforms are losing customers faster than they're and that means that their business is hurting. And that means that they're going to be under pressure to do various different things. Like Contentful, again, like I talked with I was at a conference where they were exhibiting, there was a guy I halfway know who sells for them now. And not Contentful, sorry, Optimizely. Optimizely is actually a mashup of 4 different companies at this point. Not tightly integrated in the way that you might want, but it's got 4 different products that they sell. And their core web platform, which used to be known as EpiServer, which was the number 2 to Sitecore in the Microsoft ecosystem, that's no longer, he's like, yeah, it's a big debate inside the company of which one is our flagship product now. And the vibe that I got from that plus this anecdata is, EpiServer is like long in the tooth, doesn't have the features, feels really clunky. They haven't been able to modernize it, so they're still got it in there. It's hard to rip out, but they're making their money now by selling their like content orchestration suite, which is sort of a sidecar to that, or still selling like the A/B testing tool from what was originally the optimizer that they bought and smashed on top of that server. That's what I hypothesize is going on in that market. Yes.
So what's going on with Adobe on that? Is it just the Adobe Web that's got them up in that quadrant, or is it their whole CC, or what's?
Oh, good question. So Adobe in the DXP category, quadrant, wave, what have you, it's referring to like Adobe Experience Manager, Adobe Cloud. It is not the Adobe Creative Suite. Now, Adobe as a company does enjoy tremendous tailwinds with their customers because they go in and can sell a comprehensive set of licenses for however many seats you're going to need for things in the Creative Suite. And then also, why don't we just bundle in everything you're going to need for all your digital experiences, because you can get it all from us, and it's just so easy. And they've got a team of really, really jacked sales engineers that can go out there and like build a killer demo and go in and like really blow a CMO away to get that deal done. And then sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But they have a, I mean, you know, they definitely have a. They've enjoyed the dominant position in that category for years for a reason. They have a really complete thing. But it's speaking to their digital experience tools, not to the creative things, not to like all of a creative cloud that feeds into that. Yes, and then yes.
Vercel, just the wrapper of AWS, people say. Notorious recently for buying up front-end JavaScript frameworks. The recent acquisition of Nuxt.js, which is Next.js's version of static site builder, but Vue rather than React.
Yep.
Knowing that platform and what that brings and how that's illustrated in the graph and the acceptance rate, what's akin to the platform? What can Pantheon learn? What can PHP dev DXP experiences learn from what Vercel is doing, since it is clearly giving them a trending update?
Yeah, I mean, so like what is making Vercel so successful? So I would give credit to Guillermo and his, first of all, he has such a powerful mustache, right? And that, you can't undercount that. No, but he's a real visionary. And what he did, he kind of had a successful internet business cycle as a young person. He like dropped out of high school to work on stuff, got acquired into Automatic, spent a couple of years there, didn't like working under Mullenweg, cashed out, and then spent like 5-6 years in total stealth mode building Next.js and the beginnings of what would be a platform to support Next.js. And he was very, very intentional about how he did that, and thinking about the platform and the open source tool and how that would come together to be a good business. And so I think part of what's interesting there is just a founder and a visionary who knew a developer ecosystem that was on the rise and intentionally went into it full strength to build a platform that would accelerate that adoption and build a flywheel around that. Whereas with WordPress.com wasn't that. WordPress.com was just trying to make like WordPress available to the masses. And within the world of Automatic, like anything else there was no real platforming play that was there. WP Engine came along and did that many years later, and now they're fighting over it. But Mullenweg didn't do that. He didn't have that insight. And with Acquia, they had a cloud platform for Drupal, but they did that reluctantly. That was not what they thought their business was going to be. And so it wasn't a really thoughtful case. So I think it's a combination of having sort of a really, really clear view on how the open source product and the platform would fit together. And to a certain extent, like there's luck in all of this. Like, there's hard work and skill that goes into making the open source framework in Next.js that like gains like authentic developer adoption. Because it's not like every Next.js site is running on Vercel. Like Vercel has like maybe 25% of them. But they're growing at almost exactly the same rate, which is crazy. And what that tells me is Next.js as a framework, people just like it. It's useful to them. They maybe made some smart moves around how they set up like vibe coding to work especially well, and that might be driving some of this. But I don't think it's most of it even, because again, I don't think vibe coding sites are making it into the crawl. They're still mostly prototypes. So I think the things to learn, sorry to get back to your question, would be thinking deeply about how an open source framework and a platform fit together, fostering a robust developer community, because that's the other thing that unquestionably has worked well for them. Is they have a really and they've now become kind of the de facto first thing you learn if you're going to learn the web, which is amazing for them. I don't know if PHP can actually ever get that back, because PHP is not that thing anymore. But I think in our world we can still take some lessons away from what they've done, and also, like, I'll be honest, can't beat them, join it. Like that's part of the future of how the web's going to work. We should just embrace it. And they've done lots of cool shit. Could be kind of fun. Your question.
I just on the optimizely side, you mentioned A/B testing. It's something I'm super interested in, and like what I've seen is just a profusion of platforms continually slapping the same set of features on over and over again.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if, again, very niche question, but if you could speak a little bit to from that perspective, right, in a performance perspective, like what would you think of as an ideal true market differentiator if a site was to step outside of that sort of morass of sameness?
Yeah. So I don't know of anyone that's cracked the code on this yet, but I believe that, I know that the technology exists now to do the work of A/B splitting and also potentially content personalization and other stuff like that at the edge. Not in the browser, inside the user agent where you do suffer all these performance challenges and you can't guarantee the experience and blah, 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 but actually have a computer that's running as part of your CDN, as part of your edge, do that work before the page is served to the end user. Now, the fact that that's possible, I think it's very exciting, but nobody's made it into a really successful, widely adopted thing yet. So it could be that actually, I think it's exciting and I'm wrong. It totally happens all the time. It might also be that the capability to do that with edge workers and other stuff is still very new. And Cloudflare's doing a good job of pushing the envelope there, but Cloudflare's core DNA is not as they want to be a platform for people to develop things on, and they are, but their core DNA is actually being this other thing, which is a CDN that runs, in the data here, they're the second most popular thing besides WordPress on the internet, right? Something like 30-ish% of the sites crawled were going through Cloudflare. And that's a really important and big mission, and that's a different mission than being the #1 platform for edge workers. So maybe they'll get there, maybe somebody else will, but that technology has a little while, I think, still to bake before it can become more widely adopted. If you want to do an A/B testing startup now, that's where you go, I would imagine, but it's still, nobody's done it, nobody's cracked the code yet. All right, we are at time, but I'm happy to hang out a little bit outside the room. We can open the door. It did get really warm in here, but that's because all of you are here and it's so exciting. Thank you so much and enjoy.